Welcome back to Gotcha Interact. Today we're going to be talking about kind of something new where we want to talk about each of the characters that's kind of has reruns or characters that have been around for a while, really looking at overall what they are going to be doing. Like what have they changed? Has certain things changed about the character? Is there a reason why people aren't really using the character anymore? Has certain things in the game helped them, hurt them? Are certain characters power creeping them? There's a lot of things that we kind of want to talk about. So the character we're talking about this, as you guys can already probably tell, we're going to be talking about Raiden. So she's on the banner right now, and there's been a lot of talk recently, Rift, actually, about kind of like a very weird instance, right? About her not being a very good DPS anymore comparatively. So I don't know. What are you thinking so far, at least in a very basic sense of her?
Well, yeah, we had put out our video on, should you pull Raiden, Kanish, and there has been, and rightly so, I think, to a certain extent at least, that Raiden's value has gone down since just her release. And I think, like I said, I think that's a little bit true, just because new characters come out, there's all these new teams, new metas, yada, yada, yada. So, of course, I do think to an extent that the value in her placement in the meta and power, right? There are definitely characters that are still more powerful, and we see that in the more top DPSs like Nuvolette, Arlecchino. There could even be a case made for characters like Alhaitham. Navia even is very powerful. So there's a lot of talk about that and how, especially with 5.0 and Natlin in general, with these new characters like Mualani, even Kanish himself, and characters that are yet to be seen like Zaylonin, soon to be, and Mabuika, is Raiden still a fantastic character, a worth it kind of character, and is her value still high enough to where it's still a good pull? And I think that's a valid question that a lot of players have been asking, especially even for new players. Just because if you're a new player to the game, then it does make a lot of sense that the most recent characters with kind of any game out there, the most recent stuff is probably going to be the best
They're more
option,
enticing.
right?
Yeah, definitely. I think.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you see that, in, like I said, in a lot of different games. So I can see the case to be made there. And my initial thoughts is she's still very powerful. She can still clear the content. And there's a lot of characters that can still clear the content. Are there better options? Well, definitely. Like Nuvolette is the best option, one of the best options in the game. Arlecchino, one of the best options. And we even see that in characters like Mualani and Kanish, who rival those other top characters that we had seen throughout Fontaine. And so as we progress, it's probably just going to continue to be that way, and that's just the way it is. But that doesn't necessarily rule out these older characters to be useless or just not worth it. So I do think Raiden is still a worth it kind of character.
Yeah, I think in a very basic line, like you were saying, Rift, I think like in a very basic sense, Raiden's still a very good character. I mean, I just did a build guide on my own personal channel about it, talking about how everything about her and looking into a deeper dive of her kit. I think a lot of people forget a lot of extra things that she can do for herself, but from other teammates as well. I mean, we talk universally, I think almost she solves a lot of issues with Xiangling. I mean, we already know that there's just issues and a half with Xiangling. No matter how high your ER is, for some odd reason, she never gets her burst back.
Right.
So you're almost having like she's a good battery there. She solves an issue that's, once again, not really a crazy amount, but it does, it helps a little bit. With that team, at least for the national team. She's very flexible. She's a very flexible character. She's free to play friendly as well. The national team is Xingqiu, Xiangling, Bennett. I mean, in terms of just like newer players, it's a very nice and easy team. The issue might be that, to actually go and grind her for a new player, you actually have to get to the story and then actually get to a part, to do the story past Lu Wei to actually get into Inazuma. And that can be a trouble and a half and an issue. So there's so much. I can understand.
You should be playing the story anyways, guys. So like
Exactly.
that shouldn't be like an actual problem, but it is, like he was saying, something to think about. And I think to hop off of kind of, you brought up Xiangling and that ER issue. A lot of people, not a lot, but some, especially people that get blinded by like the best in slot team options, which is obviously going to be like Overload, your Mono Electro with the Kazuha variant, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes people tend to overlook that Raiden National that you were talking about. And not everyone. I know there's a lot of people out there that are like, hey, Raiden National, it's goated. And they have a very fair point. It's really good team, very comfortable team. and Xiangling's just amazing for that. You can even use Xiangling in the Overload team too. But I think honestly, to the point of this, the event we have that's going on right now, I believe it's like day 3 that they give you a trial Raiden and Yao Yao. But what I did for that is I did Raiden, obviously. I did my Raiden. And then I used Yelan, but you could even just use Xingqiu, Bennett, and Xiangling. And that team is so incredibly powerful, it's not even funny. And that's, honestly, guys, that's actually the team I was using before I had Kazuha. This is before Chevreuse existed. I didn't have Kazuha yet to do the, awesome Mono Electro Raiden team. So I was just doing a lot of different national soup teams with her. And honestly, with the Raiden national team, it's not that far underneath from even the Overload and Mono Electro, just because of the synergy. Xiangling, once again, any kind of characters that are doing burst damage from off field, Xingqiu is a very good option for that. There's just so many things you can do. She's so comfortable, and there is even the talk of the Hyper Bloom, which isn't a main thing to do, but it is at least an option. I wouldn't recommend that all the way, but just know that it's kind of in the pocket, it's in the holster. She can do it, and she's very good at it because she has no limit to the range with her skill. If you're all the way far away, it's gonna proc her little electro damage, and if there's a core out there 50 meters away from you, well, you're hyperbling, whereas someone like Cookie's not getting that. So there's just different ways to think about that, but like, that's a thing she can do very well. There's all of these different things she can do very well, and so in terms of value, it's gone down slightly just because of these other characters that are available. But she really hasn't changed at all. Chevreuse was a recent and definite upgrade to her, so I feel like MiHoYo or Hoyoverse was still trying to hey guys, Raiden is still a great option. Now, of course, Chevreuse is used for these other Overload teams like Arlecchino. It could have just been, you could argue that Chevreuse was a setup for Arlecchino and Claran, but the Raiden everyone was talking about, and why in 4.3 was everyone glazing over Raiden? Not to say that, she's gilded or anything, but everyone was like, that was the hype. Oh, Raiden, and you get Chevreuse for Raiden, but now all of a sudden it's like, Raiden's not that great. You shouldn't go for her. It's just weird to see that kind of talk. And for a new player, even if they have 0 5-stars right now, I think Raiden is still a great pickup.
I totally agree. I think in general, no matter what, that is one of the best decisions you can make for your account is going after Raiden. I mean, never mind that she's a great character. She's really flexible. I mean, even talking about her kit in and of itself, Emblem is so widely used among so many different characters that grinding that domain for her is also grinding out the domain for so many other characters. But also besides that, what about her weapon? I mean, her weapon situation, everybody is, looking at this character and this character, oh, they really suffer without their weapon, especially as a DPS. You really need the weapon, or you need deathmatch, or you need XYZ, you need a crit weapon, you need this, you need that. Whereas, I mean, her 4-star option is, in my personal opinion, her second best weapon. I know technically people put Staff of Homa as her second best weapon because it's a high crit, gives more attack, just like her weapon gives attack based off ER. But I actually like, especially R5 the Catch, which is a free-to-play weapon you can get, plus all the refinements for just fishing. It's an extremely good weapon. I think it deserves to be second place behind her personal weapon, Engulfing Lightning. And I mean, when I first had her at C0, when she first came out, I used the Catch, and until I got to the point where I could get constellations in the weapon later, that really helped still solidify me clearing, the end of the game, end game, content still. So I still heavily enjoyed my time with that, for sure.
Yeah, and I think to kind of counter the argument that people make, that once again is a valid point to, just point out that Raiden's value has decreased. She's not as amazing, right? There is some fairness to that. And the reason I say that is because, I mean, if we look at the other side of the coin, let's look at the enemies that we have to face. Not just talking about the character's power, the enemies we face have also gotten more powerful. The Abyss has tended to get a little bit more difficult. It's just really kind of trending since the release of Fontaine. The Abyss started to just get a little bit more just difficult. And so that's a fair point to make. Can Raiden still clear the content? Depending on those enemies, yes. But here's the key thing. With any content, with any enemies, any character, it heavily depends on what you're fighting. I don't care how good Neuvillette is, he's not killing the Hydrotulpa. So it really depends more than looking at specific characters. While that matters, if you're a new player, the most important thing is to look at coverage of different roles, different elements. If you're just specking into only pyro characters, you're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna get Arlecchino because everyone says she's goated, and she is. She's not a bad pickup. Go for her if you, by all means. She's amazing. But then don't go for like Hu Tao, Yoimiya, or the next whatever pyro DPS because you already have Arlecchino. And if you already have an older unit like Hu Tao, that's something to heavily think about because you have that already. If you're still lacking for something like an Electro DPS, and it doesn't have to be Raiden, it could be Cloran, it could be Sino even. It just kind of depends on what you have on your account, and that heavily influences what characters actually have more value for you as a player compared to other players. Like for me, a certain cryo character like even Ayaka or Ganyu, older cryo units, have more value for me than they would for Vixen because Vixen already has Ayaka, he has Wriothesley. I don't actually have a cryo DPS yet, believe it or not, guys. So a character even like Ganyu is not a terrible pickup for me, especially because I have been playing the game a long time. I'm at the point where my account kind of has everything I need. And you may not need all 7 elements in the form of a DPS. Like, I don't have a Geo DPS, I don't have Navia, I don't have Ito, but I have built Zhongli, and I even built my Noelle and Ningguang, and I haven't really suffered when needing Geo, like when fighting the Golem, Legatus Golem or whatever. When we had the Wolf Lord in the Abyss, I never had an issue. Now, yes, it was a little bit more difficult, but my point here is, with Raiden, she still has a lot of value. It's not as big as it used to be because in comparison, there were units that existed or maybe didn't exist that just made Raiden the best option. What to me has only changed is that she's not the best option anymore. She's still a very, very valuable option though. And so that's just kind of how I see it.
I was gonna bring up to the point, I was waiting, and it's exactly like you said. I couldn't have said it better actually. You're at the point where Raiden's just not number 1 anymore. That's the basic line where I think people are like, she's not number 1, therefore she's trash. And that's just not the case. A lot of the times you see almost everybody talking about the meta things that happen, right? You have, oh, this is meta. You have your Arlecchino Vape team, your Arlecchino Overload, you have Neuvillette Farina, and anything else that you try is dog. You should never try anything else. And that's just wrong. Like, that's just actually stupid. And I've even had people tell me, Wriothesley's bad, don't use him. Don't do it. It's not worth it. And to their point, and to their, correct, we've talked about this, he's not an extremely strong character. He's not on Neuvillette's level, but he can clear the end game content that I need him for. And he does extremely well in the Imaginarium Theater on a melt team, or in even just doing what he needs to do. So all it takes...
That's just another great point, is Imaginarium Theater, like having that coverage.
Exactly.
Right?
And that's all that matters, right? Is just figuring out coverage. And that's actually a very good word, because when I was talking, whenever Rift was starting Genshin, and then we were kind of getting into it with each other, then we were figuring out, even now, you have to figure out the holes on your account. And as you play the game for 4 years like I have at this point, I still have holes on my account that I can probably still fill. But
as do I, yeah.
Exactly. So whereas you have a cryo DPS, I don't have like the most goated shielders in the game. So there's cracks that you can fill, but if you're at least covering most of the game, you're gonna do perfectly fine. I don't think me and you have suffered or had any issues with an Abyss not 36 clearing in a very long time. So for most people, Raiden, going back to it, is an extremely good character, does the job perfectly well, and if anything is actually really good for those newer players. If you're a little bit of an older player and you still don't have her and you're thinking, I just want to pick her up, go for it. She's, once again, still for a later game player, easy to build. It's even easier actually. So I would just say to go for it at the end of the day. She's a great character. Not too sure why the community's hating on her, besides the fact that, like you said, Riff, she's just not number 1 anymore, which doesn't necessarily mean that she's useless. It just means that she's not number 1. Well, that's everything we've got talking about Raiden. If we've kind of jumped over that 1,000 different times on why she's still good in a sense, let us know your thoughts down in the comments. Make sure to like and subscribe to the video. Also check out our Discord as well. If you guys want to debate us on it as well, you can. But also, we're going to try to do this with some other characters as well, talking about some old rerun characters. Try to make this a normality where we start to look at kind of the usefulness and kind of gauge where people in the community are really thinking about characters in the game right now. if they're not
Give some hot
necessarily at the top.
takes, you know.
Exactly. So if you guys want to look for that more of that content, once again, please go ahead and make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you guys in the next one.